Hi everyone, this is Dr. Keith. I'm going to help you guys get SQL Server analysis services installed on your machines and ready to go, along with the data mining add-in for Excel, so you can use those data mining tools and features that are only available that way. So I'm going to begin by downloading the correct version of SQL Server in the first place. And for those of you who are students in one of our IS courses, you have access to that software and many others for free through the MSDNAA Academic Alliance with Microsoft through BYU. So open a browser, type in msdnaa.byu.edu. That'll take you to our site here that explains what it is. You should already have an account set up by your instructor, and typically that's going to be your BYU email address or BYU net ID, I believe, your email address. So we'll click on this link right here, MSDNAA site. Wait for it to take us there. You'll see DreamSpark. I'm going to resize this so you can see it better. Scroll down. Here's a list of our titles. I'm going to go ahead and sign in for our first time. If you haven't done this already, make sure the account's already been set up for you. So type in my info. I'm not going to tell you exactly what yours is because I'm not sure if it's going to be set up with your email address or with your net ID. Your instructors will let you know. So here's my list of titles. SQL Server. I'm going to find it under the servers here category. Currently 2012 is the latest version, but if you're watching this and a newer one has come out, go ahead and just get the latest version. But I'm going to click right here on Microsoft SQL Server 2012. Lots of different versions. Many of them will work. For those of you especially that might go on to the IS program, I'd recommend just sticking with the full version, Microsoft SQL Server 2012 Enterprise 3264-bit. So add it to cart, and I've already done that, so it's going to give me a little error message saying you've already got it in your cart. But you guys go ahead and check out. Once you're done, you'll have a link to it. Here's a list of everything I have downloaded. So I'm just going to go click directly on my link. Let's see here, right down here at the bottom. Oops, let's try that once more. SQL Server. Okay. Now if this is your first time downloading one of these software titles from the MSDNA, you might have to install a small piece of software first called this Secure Download Manager. Download this file and install it. Let me move my screen up so you can see this here. Clear all these out. I've already got it downloaded, so I won't need to do it again. But once you've done that and installed it, then you can download the SDX file. So again, you'll download this piece first, download this piece second, and this is a downloader. You'll double click and open up, and I've actually already got this running and downloading. It's just about done. So I think I can just pull up my previous one. So once you open it up, you'll see something like this. Let's resize this a bit. And what you'll see is a little download button right here, which I clicked about. It's probably going to take about a full hour, maybe 2 hours for this to download. So I clicked mine a little while ago, and I'm about 88% done. So I'm going to pause this recording for a second, and you can pause as well and pick it back up once you've got it downloaded, and we'll go from there. Okay, now that you've unpaused, hopefully yours is completely downloaded, ready to go. We're going to click Launch to launch this setup. Now if you're on Windows 7 like I am, you'll be given, well, regardless of what you're on, you'll be given what's called an ISO file. If this is your first exposure to an ISO file, what it is, it's a disk image that if I were to just simply double click and open this up in Windows 7, it's going to want to burn this image to a DVD. So that's one option. If you want to, you could stick a blank DVD in your machine right now. I would check Verify Disk after burning and click Burn, and let it burn a copy of this software for you. Once it's done and the disk pops out, you'll simply pop it right back in and begin to install it again. If you have Windows 8, however, it has an ISO handler that will simply allow you to install directly from this ISO file, and you can skip this step. Or if you're like me in Windows 7 and you don't want to have to burn a DVD, I'm going to cancel out of this. You can use a program that will let you create a virtual DVD drive and install from an ISO without having to burn a DVD. So I use a program called Magic ISO. If you don't have it already, let's go through the process right now of finding it. I'm going to pull open a browser again. And because the link changes occasionally, I'm going to simply search on Google for free Magic ISO. So the download that you want is not this first one that shows up, but right here, freeware Magic ISO virtual CD DVD ROM overview. And we get a few options to download. So again, if you want to, you could just type in this URL right here at the top. So I'm in Windows 7. Download the version that you need for your operating system. Let's go ahead and get that downloading. It's a pretty quick setup. And in fact, I'm not going to go through the process of installing this because I already have, but this is pretty straightforward. Pause it right now, double click Setup Magic Disk. You'll get the little prompt and installation wizard. I'm going to cancel out of it, but again, if you don't have it, just click Next and follow through and continue this. But I'm going to go ahead and cancel for now. Okay, next, here's what you're going to see. I'm going to move my screen down for you to see, hopefully, well, actually, let me pause for a second. Let's first, now that it's installed, open it from the Start menu. So you can only just barely see my Start menu, so let me move this down here so you can see it. I'm going to go to All Programs, find Magic ISO, which just installed, Magic Disk, excuse me. Now when you open it up, you might think, okay, nothing happened. However, what did happen is if you look down in the lower right corner of your screen, let's see if I can move this over and show it to you again, you should see this little Magic ISO icon. So I'm going to right click on Magic ISO, and it gives me these options, and it says virtual CD DVD ROM, and yours probably says something like, I'm going to unmount mine first here, sorry. Yours will look more like this. No media. And what it's done is created a virtual or temporary DVD drive which doesn't actually exist, but what it's going to let us do is what's called mount an ISO file into this virtual drive. So it brings this up, and what I need to do next is locate that ISO file that's been downloaded. Well, in case you've forgotten, it downloaded to what's called the Downloads folder, and that's in the folder with your name on it if you're in Windows 7. Downloads. And here's a few other things I've downloaded. But here is, whoops, there we go, here's my ISO file. So I double click on this, and now if I come back to Magic, oh, there we go, it actually pulled up automatically. It acts as if I just stuck a DVD in the DVD drive with SQL Server on it. So my next step now is to go ahead and run setup. Now if that didn't happen with you, if it didn't pop open this window for you like it did for me, you can come down here in the corner to Magic Disk. Let me move this over again. And you can right click on this Magic ISO image again and go to Virtual CD DVD ROM again, and it will pull up this window with the name of that ISO that you just mounted, and you can select Browse CD. Once you click Browse CD, it'll bring up what looks like all the files on that virtual CD DVD, and you can just double click setup.exe. Alright, so I'm just going to go ahead and click it from here, run setup.exe. Yes, give it permission. Now we're going to have to wait a second while this loads and gets ready to install. In the meantime, I'm going to move some of my windows out of the way. I can close this out now. Okay, I'm going to pause this video for a second because it takes a few minutes for this actually to pull up and get ready to install. So let's pause. Okay, unpaused. Now we've got the SQL Server Installation Center that's finally popped up. And the first thing it has here is the Planning tab selected and a bunch of information. We can skip through all of this. I'm going to actually just ignore this and click over here on the Installation tab. Okay, once we click on Installation, we have a few options. Let's select New SQL Server Standalone Installation or Add Features to Existing Installation. So click on that one, and again, this might take it just a second for it to pop up. Let's go ahead and pause just for a second while we wait for that. Okay, my setup support rules just popped up with this screen right here. Unless you've got some other problems, it should check and make sure that you pass a variety of checks to make sure that you're able to install SQL Server. If any of these didn't pass, pause the video and just follow the instructions it gives you for resolving that. You may have to go to Windows Updates. So again, click on your Start menu, find Windows Update, and make sure that you've run all the updates, that you've got the latest versions of .NET installed, and things like that. Once you've done that, you might have to reboot your computer, and you can follow my instructions again to set up and install SQL Server, and you'll get to this point. So let's assume that everything's passed. Click OK. We wait a moment. Everything takes time. Alright, so if you downloaded your product from the MSDN AA like I did, it's going to have a product key already entered in for you. So let's go ahead and hit next, or if you didn't download it from there, enter in your product key now, obviously. Next, we're going to accept the terms. It's up to you if you want to send your usage data to Microsoft. Not a bad idea if they're giving you this tool for free, but that's up to you. Hit next. Okay, it's already found and updated for online. Sounds good. It'll download that automatically. I hit next. We wait for it to download and install setup files. So while I'm waiting for this to run, I'm going to go ahead and pause again. Alright. Once that's done, you might get a little message like this. One or more affected files have operations pending. You have to restart after the setup's done. Just hit OK. That's no problem. Also, if you didn't need to install setup files at all and it ignored that step, don't worry. I've had it sometimes come up on some machines and not on other machines. So we wait a moment for that operation to be completed. Alright, then we get this message that pops up. Setup support rules. You've passed each of the following checks, but we get a warning about Windows Firewall. Don't worry about the warning, it'll be just fine. We're going to hit next, and again, obviously if yours didn't pass, you're going to have to look into the details of those, but we're not going to worry about that for now. So next, we want to install a SQL Server feature installation. That's selected by default, so just hit next. This is an important part. Now by default, nothing's selected, but we want database engine services, and let's go ahead and check each of these sub options, and most importantly, we also need analysis services. So what you select beyond there is completely up to you. There's reporting services, which I'm actually going to be using later, but you don't have to have that if you're trying to keep the total size down. And I'm actually going to be using all of these things. So unless you're going to be an IS major in our department, you probably don't need these. Even if you are an IS major, there's a lot of them you don't need. So again, that's completely up to you. Let's hit next. But again, at this point, just make sure that you don't forget to install analysis services. Alright. Installation rules, it's going to check again based on what we just selected. Are we good to go? Yep, 3 passed. Here's the details. Let's just hit next. Now, default instance or named instance. You can do either one, and if you've installed SQL Server before, and you've already set up the default instance, it's going to require you to set up a named instance and to give it a name. That's no problem. For what we're doing, you can do either one. If this is your first installation, let's just stick with the default instance. However, if you do create a named instance, that's going to have some implications for how we connect to SQL Server from Excel later on. So again, if you create a named instance, just make sure you write down the name, or I can show you where to find it later, but just don't forget that you're going to do things a little bit differently later on. I'm going to stick with the default instance since I just wiped this computer. It's the first time I've installed SQL Server on it, and hit next. Alright, we keep waiting. Here we go. It's going to take 8 gigs to install this. It's pretty big. It's actually, well, yeah, no, 8 gigs is about right. So again, takes up quite a bit of room. So just make sure you have it. I've got 230 gigs available, so that's no problem. Actually closer to 9 gigs looks like to install it. Anyway, hit next. Okay, at this point, I'm going to leave everything exactly how it is. Don't have to worry about collation. Let's just hit next. At this point, though, you do need to come down here. For the server configuration, we're going to use Windows authentication mode. Well, I'm trying to make up my mind here. We could actually do either or. If you're just using this for SQL Server analysis services, you can just leave it as Windows authentication mode. And then come down here and click Add Current User. You could also use mixed mode if you wanted to. If you know you're going to use this for other reasons and you're going to have an instance of SQL Server on here that you're going to want people to authenticate through SQL Server, you could do mixed mode. But if you don't think you're going to be using that in the future, just leave it as Windows authentication mode, and that's fine. But make sure you click Add Current User, and then that it brings up the current user that's logged in right now. Once you've done that, there is one other thing you could do here, but let me be clear, this part's optional. If you click on File Stream and enable File Stream, if you were to use the, later on there's the sample data, the AdventureWorks database that you can use and do examples on and kind of learn these tools on. There's reasons later that you might want to enable File Stream and click these two options, but that's entirely optional and you don't have to have that in order to get analysis services set up. So I'm just going to click Next now. Again, under Analysis Services Configuration, just add current user. Make sure it brings you up right there. Hit Next. Reporting services, you may not have this if you didn't check it before. I'm going to install only. I'm not going to worry about configuring if you check that. Now, if you didn't check reporting services earlier on in the feature selection, you might not get this screen, and that's no problem. Just ignore it if you didn't get it. Here in Distributed Replay Controller, again, you may not have this, but I'm going to click Add Current User if you do have it. Next. I'm going to leave this screen blank. Or no, sorry, not blank. I'm not going to touch anything here. Click Next. Again, Next for error reporting. Here's our details, configuration rules. We've passed everything. Click Next. Ready to install. Install. Okay. This part could take a while, up to an hour, so I'm going to pause it now. So let this run, and when this is done, I'm going to show you how to download and find the data mining add-in for Excel and get that installed and configured. So I'll go ahead and pause now. Alright, moving on. You may have gotten this message again, computer restart required. Just go ahead and click OK. Let it finish this current operation. While it's doing that, you'll notice that looks like each of our features succeeded. We can scroll down the list and check. You probably don't have this many because you may have only installed a couple. But again, make sure that you see analysis services on there and that it installed correctly. So that does it for the SQL Server setup. I'm going to close this now. And let's now find and install the data mining app. Okay, so let's close out of the SQL Server setup, or installation center. I'm going to come back to the web, and the location of this file, or this software, changes every once in a while with different versions of the software coming out. So I'm just going to show you how to search for it and find it your own on Google. So what we're looking for is called the SQL Server data mining add-in for Excel, and I have Excel 2011, or excuse me, 2013. So I'm searching for 2013. So I'm just going to type into Google SQL Server data mining add-in for Excel 2013. Okay, and it's going to come from Microsoft, not from another site. So here you can see download SQL Server. No, oh, add-ins. That's probably it. Let's try that one. It's from Microsoft, so that looks right. Okay, yep, here we go. 2012. It's actually the add-in for SQL Server 2012 for Microsoft Office, and in this case for Office 2013. Okay, it's the same add-in for both 2010 and 2013. So if you have either version, this is the right place. Feel free to just look up here, copy the URL, and type it in. But I have the 64-bit version of Windows 7. How do you find out? Well, you can click over here on the Start menu to see which version you have. I'm going to right-click on Computer and go to Properties. So again, I right-click the Computer option, hit Properties, move this down here, and it tells me here system type 64-bit operating system. Now if the version of Office you have installed is 32-bit, even though your operating system is 64-bit, you'll likely have to install the 32-bit version anyway. So just keep that in mind. Let's move our screen back over so you can see. Okay, I'm pretty sure I've got 64-bit versions of everything, so I'm going to download that version. Let's double click and install that. Well, once it's done downloading. There we go. Okay, double click. Yes, we want to run this file. Okay, we're going to hit next, accept, next. We want to, at this point, check and say entire feature will be installed. Definitely for this one, data mining client for Excel. You don't have to do this for the templates for Visio. That's optional, but I'm going to be using it myself, so I'm going to go ahead and click entire feature installed. Hit next, install. Maybe I'll go ahead. Okay, while I had that paused, I got that administrator pop-up that dims the whole screen and asks if it can have administrator privileges to install the software. Of course, just go ahead and hit yes or OK. Then it'll continue or proceed to install. I'll just hang with you here while it does that. It's not a big piece of software, so it really shouldn't take that long. It's only a few megabytes compared to the SQL Server, which was 9 gigabytes. Okay, hit finish. Now that's installed, we have one last step. We need to connect, well, one 3-part step. We need to connect Excel to SQL Server Analysis Services so that Excel can send data over to SQL Server and pull data back after it's been analyzed by it. So I'm going to expand or move my screen over here so you can see the Start menu while I do all this. Let's begin by going to the Start menu. All programs where the data mining add-in has just been installed. So you can see I've got a bunch of things that have been installed recently, but we want to click here on Microsoft SQL Server 2012 Data Mining Add-in, and let's click the Getting Started wizard. Go ahead and minimize this. Okay. So you should have this. And we want to use an existing instance of Microsoft SQL Server 2008 or later, which I administrator, so we installed it locally on our own machines. That means that you administer it. So hit next, and says click this link to run the server configuration utility. Okay, so let's click the link. Here's a server configuration utility. Let's click next. Server name, localhost. Now remember back when we installed SQL Server and I said if you use the default instance, well, you could use either the default instance or create a named instance. Here's where that matters. If you just use the default instance, you just leave this as localhost. However, if you created a named instance, you're going to add a backslash and the name of the instance you created right here. If not, again, just delete that out of there and leave it as localhost and click next. Okay, let's just click next. Leave this checked. Allow creating temporary mining models. That's important to make sure that's left checked for Excel not to waste too much space as you're using this tool. Okay, so what it wants to do now is create a database for within SQL Server Analysis Services for Excel to create its temporary data mining models and structures. So it gives you this name by default. You don't have to use that name. You can change it if you want, but I'm just going to leave that default name and click next. Again, just make sure that your name your local user account name is here. If not, you'll have to add it from this little window right here. However, yours will probably already be in there, so just go ahead and oh, and now I messed it up by doing that. Let me hit back and then next and finish. There we go. So now it's gone through and connected to Analysis Services, set it to allow temporary models. It's created the database, added permissions for you. We're going to hit close now, and back in this screen we're going to hit finish. And again, what this will do is open. I'm going to uncheck it so I can show you where to find it manually. So it also installed some demo data in an Excel file for you to use. I'm going to hit close here, and let's open that up. So click on your start menu, all programs. If you're in Windows 8, this will have installed as a program as well. So you should be able to search for and find sample Excel data, and that should show up if you're in Windows 8. But that's what I'm going to open up now, and this is truly the very last thing we have to do. I know it's been a long process. We're getting close to 30 minutes now, but I promise it'll be worth it. This is some pretty cool stuff. So we wait for Excel to open up. I'm going to shape this to fit our screen here. Oops, one moment. Move that up here and bring up the bottom a bit. Okay, there we go. Alright, so we have a bunch of tabs here along the bottom. Table Analysis Tools Sample has sample data for some bike buying company. So this is example data we might collect from consumers in our organization. Marital status, gender, income, children, education, all the way to whether or not they purchased one of our bikes. So purchase bike is likely our dependent variable in a lot of our analyses. This is what we want to predict or determine, because if we can predict this, then we can decide and find out who are the types of people who purchase bikes, and this tells us who we should go after. So we want to run a few sample analyses. To do that, there's two different ways. As long as this table is selected, and in order to use this tool, there has to be an Excel table inserted on the data. So if you're doing this with your own data and it's not put in this nice table format, you might have to go to Insert and then Table. But of course mine's grayed out because I already have one in there. So anyway, once you have this table, you're going to get this Table Tools tab, the Design and Analyze tab. You'll only have this Analyze tab because you've got SQL Server Analysis Services installed and the Data Mining add-in. We also have this Data Mining tab. And this tab does everything, this tab will do everything that this Analyze tab will do plus more, but it's a bit more complicated and it'll take a little bit more training to learn how to use all these tools. So I teach in 201 this Analyze tab, and these are some of the basic data mining tools you can use and learn for that class. But before we can use them, we have one last very small step. Right here under Connection, Excel wants to know where are we going to find the instance of Analysis Services to connect to and to send this data to, so that we can analyze it. So click No Connection, and then we're going to click New to create a new one. The server name, once again, here's where that default instance versus named instance matters. If you just use the default instance, it's localhost. Otherwise, if not, it's going to be localhost / name of the instance you created. But we just did a default instance, so I'm going to leave it as localhost. For now, they only allow using Windows authentication. We can talk about that in class later, what the implications are. That's why you had to install it on this machine and why you couldn't have connected remotely to another machine. However, come down here to Catalog Name and just click on the drop-down list, and it's going to search for, under localhost, an Analysis Services database and see if there's a database set up in it. And remember, we created that one with the server configuration utility, the DM add-ins DB. That's the one we want. Let's test our connection. Test connection succeeded. Good. Hit OK. Close. We are finally done and ready to go. So as long as you see this, as long as you see this right here, everything's set up and ready. So quick demo of the tools just to make sure that it truly is working. Let's analyze the key influencers of whether or not someone purchased a bike. Click Analyze Key Influencers. Which column do we want to analyze for key factors? Well, we want to find out what were the key factors in the purchase bike column. We don't want to use the ID column, so I'm going to deselect that, hit OK, and then run. What it's doing right now is taking the data in Excel and it's shipping it over to SQL Server Analysis Services, because that's where the advanced data mining algorithms are stored. in order to process this data. Then it sends the data back to Excel, and it's interpreted and placed in these nice graphs and charts and tables for you. You'll learn all these in future videos or in the slides in class. But all this tells me is that yes, everything worked, everything's set up correctly, and just a quick and dirty interpretation of this data. This means that people with 2 cars were most likely not to purchase a bike, and whether or not, and if they had 0 cars, that was the largest indicator that they would purchase a bike. Anyway, we'll go into more details on this later, but if you got to this point, you are all set up and ready to go.